Good morning. Welcome back to Working with Watson. So this is the second day we're looking at water on Earth and what we have here. So on this sheet, slide 4 over here, and here's what we're going to go through. And I'm going to go through it in this video, and then I want you to kind of go back, and you might have to flip back and forth between the video and your screen to help fill some of these in. Some of them are going to be very easy. Like our first question, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it, but this first one here, what are 5 ways that you use water? That should be pretty easy to come up with 5 ways to use water. So all you'll do, come up, grab a text box, throw a text box in, and then put down how you use water. Okay. Some of these other ones, we get a little more complicated than that. So let's kind of go through, work our way through those. So as you saw on the last page, up here with water, most of the water on Earth is salt water. There's very little fresh water. So when we're talking about Earth's water is at, well, most of the Earth's water, oops, trying to add a text box, or remove this text box. Most of the water is actually frozen, especially the water, fresh water that we need. So where is it located? Well, at the top of the Earth, or at the bottom of the Earth, which would be the North Pole. And we're just going to copy and paste. So North Pole, or, well, opposite of the North Pole would be the South Pole. And don't worry about if you just put those in the same box. You don't need to make 2 separate boxes for that. So North Pole, South Pole, where most, especially the fresh water, as we saw on the one before, most of fresh water is actually frozen on Earth. And what are they in the form of? If they're on the North Pole and the South Pole, well, those two things are covered with, you got her, ice. Well, text boxes do not like to stay close to my lines where they're red. There we go. So they are in the form of ice. The next thing that we're looking at here is the amount of water. And as we have talked about, the amount of water on Earth, and that's what we need here. Again, we're just going to kind of go through. We'll add text boxes to the amount of water that we have on Earth has not changed. Okay? It has moved around constantly, but it has not changed. So the amount of, what do we have here? We have water has stayed the same over. Now, we have a word here that goes from, not decades, not centuries, millenniums. We're talking millions and millions of years. So it's called eons. So water has not changed for eons. We'll get a couple more in here, and then we'll be set. So water's not changed for eons, but it has constantly been either changing in what? Well, water changes from ice to water vapor, back to water, back to ice. So it is constantly changing states of matter, or you might call it forms. So it changes forms constantly. And again, I just answered that last one. Law of water is, what is it? Constantly changing. So water is constantly changing. The water, the snow outside right now, as soon as it gets warm enough, it's going to start to evaporate. It's going to evaporate a little bit now, just very, very slowly. Water vapor in the air is changing. It's going to crystallize. Especially as it goes up in the sky, it's going to get colder. It's going to turn to ice. It's going to condense. And we'll talk more about that later on this week. And then the sun is the driving blank of the Earth's blank. The major blank of the blank which powers the water cycle is the blank. Totally makes sense, right? I don't even know what it makes, how it Yeah, it's a little confusing. So there's a word that's saying when something is the main pushing item behind it. It is the driving force of the Earth. Well, the Earth's what? What does the sun control here on Earth? Big, it involves water, it involves the sun, um, talking wind and everything. Well, that would be weather. So the sun, sorry, is the driving force of Earth's weather. And it is the major blank of blank. So let's split it up here a little bit. So the main blank, the beginning of something, right? What's that word where something begins somewhere? It is the major, hopefully you got it, source of, well, what does the sun give? We talked about this with plants. We talked about it with the food chain. It's the thing that starts all the energy. So the source of energy which powers the water cycle is and we already said it, it's right there. It's the sun. So let's add one more text box here. Is the sun. Right. And then this side, here's what I want you to kind of really think about when you fill this out. I'm really worried, or not worried, I'm really want you to focus on these top ones. What are these 6 items? What are these 6 items that, or examples, I should say, not items. What are these 6 examples, drawing sketches of, right here? So what I want you to do, I want you to pause this video real quick, go into yours, really look at those, and see if you can name all 6 of those. Once you do have a name for all 6 of them, whether you're right or wrong, that's fine. Come back, unpause this video, and do a check and see if you got it right. Okay. So pause the video right now. Pause the video, and then come back in a minute. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you filled in those 6 boxes, and let's do a quick check. So as you can see here, the first one is actually by far the hardest. I think they should have put that one last. I think they put the easiest one first. But put in here, this is a spring. Now, this is not a bed spring or some, trampoline springs to get you bouncing up and down. It is a source of water coming up from the ground. A lot of times you might have heard of a hot spring. Some of those are located in Arkansas, where they are heated up from underneath the ground with thermal energy. Some you might hear as a cold water spring. Those a lot of times come down from mountains, but there's a source of fresh water there. The next one over here, it's a little bit bigger of a flowing thing of water, would be a stream. The skinny little one would be smaller. It's a creek, depending on where you're from. Maybe somebody refers to it as a crick. My grandma used to call it a crick, not a creek, just depending on your accent. The bigger one, then again, a flowing water, is a river. We have a lake here. I believe this is a dock. I think that's what that is. Maybe a little boat. I don't know. And then the last one is an ocean. So again, the easiest one is probably last. And then 2 classifications of water. Well, we talked about it on our sheet before. We have fresh water, we have salt water. Well, salt water is found in the oceans, and fresh water is our primary source of our drinking water. It's where we are able to use the water that is there. We call it drinking water because we can drink it, but it's also our bathing water, water we use for fun, sprinklers, water balloon fights, more. Okay? And then when we get to the water cycle itself, the water cycle has no start and it has no end. Water is just continually circling around over and over, up into the sky, back down, up into the sky, back down, sits on the ground for a little bit, goes back up in the sky, comes back down. There is no start, there is no end, it just continually keeps going. Okay? So now go back into your slide, make sure you have everything there filled out that you need to. Don't forget to turn this homework assignment in when you are done. Comment and let me know that you got it done. Peace.